today's lesson we will learn about the loops, and our first lesson for loops will be for loops. We will see different examples of for loop, and we will also see an example program. We will see how much our money will grow if we double it, and then as we progress later on in this series we will make some games using loops. Now, what is a loop? A loop is a loop like in any sense of the word, that it comes around. So let's see an example for a loop. So what would you say a loop is? A loop would be something that comes back, then goes back again. Now, if you don't want it to be continuously doing that, what we do is at a certain point we want it to check, should I go again or not? If it is yes, then the loop goes back again. If it is no, then it comes again at this point. Let's say this was our checking point, right? This was our checking point. This was our checking point. We checked it, and if it is no, if it is yes, then we go back again. If it's no, then we stop. This is a loop. Now, how do we write loops in programming? In programming, we write loops just like we count in normal day. So let's pull the IDLE and show you an example of a simple loop in Python that goes through all the things in a list. So let's take a look. I have my IDLE open. I'm going to open a new file, and in that file I'm just going to write a little loop, and I want to say loop instruction is for some value x in, and in here I have a list that says Jim, then Tim, and Kim, right? I have a list that I write it down like that. Oh, sorry, I have to put a colon here to state that this function is complete, and then I can just say I want to just print the name is comma x. So what is happening is that this for will make this x, so for this for will pick up this x from this list one at a time. So for the very first run of this, first this x will check that whether there are items that it hasn't traversed, then it will pick up, and then it will print the first one, then the second one, then the third one, right? So what we want to do is after that, so let's go ahead and run it, and let me run it. Of course, when I run module, it will ask me to save, and I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it into my program. So I will just call it loop1 because we will be making a lot of loop files in there. So as you can see, it has run through all of those. So if you take a look at the program and the output at the same time, side by side, you can see that we have the program is going through all the items in there. So that is the easiest way of doing that. If you have a bunch of items that are already in list, we will cover list in later discussions, but here we have a simple one. Now we can actually go through the values or characters in a string as well. So let's go ahead and try that. So I'm going to kind of just rewrite this one, and I say for what? For, let's say, character in, and let's say my text. So I want to go through each character in the string my text, and I want to print it ch, right? So I want to print them separately. So what this will do is this will pick up the values of the, hold on. So this will pick up the values one at a time from this and print that up. So let's go ahead and run that. Since this is the file that I was already working on, so it's okay to save, and it's going to run. And as you guys can see that I have this each character in the text print out in here. So I can say that if character equal t, we can say we have the that many t's and so on. There are several functions, string functions that are available. Now sometimes we want to have counting loops. For counting loops, we use the range function, right? So let's have an example of a counting loop. So let's say we say for I in range, I want to have a range of values of I. Now I have given it the range of 6. What does that mean? That the originally by default the starting value is going to be 0. So the first value that I will get is 0. It will go up by 1 and then it will stop before it reaches 6, right? So if I have that and say print I, so let's see what values is I getting. Okay, so I'm going to run this as this program is already saved. Sorry, I should go run and run the module. And you can see that it has printed values. Now take a look. I can only go from, I have run the loop 6 times. You can see that the values are going from I'm just trying to pull it up in here, from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I'm using a range function that allows me to use values up to 6. So by default it is starting at 0, going up by 1. So any for loop requires 3 values. One is the start value, second is the end value, or sorry, the step size, and how far should it go. Just like if I say, hey, count from a start value to an end value. So you will ask me, okay, let's say I'm start counting from 10. Should I go up by 1 or go up by 2s? You know, we can do that. So now let's go ahead and write down another version of a range function. You guys see that if you provide only one value, it will start from 0 up to the value that we have given. So if I write it a little differently, if I write it like that, that means that I want to start at 2 and end before 6. So when I have 2 values in that, the starting value will change, but the step size stays the same. So we'll go ahead and let's see if we run it, how does it go? And as you can see that it has started from 2 and goes up to less than 6. So let's do one more time, but if I don't want to have that step size. So in that case, what I would do is I'm going to first close that. And in here, I will say start from 2, go up by 3, and go before, let's say 16, right? And I want to print. So my first value would be 2, then each of my step size would be 3, and I want to stop before 16, right? So let's go ahead and run. Let's see what values do I get. As you can see, I get the values. Okay, I did something wrong. Let me check what I have done wrong in here. So my oversight, this is the starting value, this is the ending value, and we entered the increment size. I put the increment size here, so it was thinking that I have to go up by 16. So here it will go from 2 to 16 by using the increment size of 3. So let's see how that works out. And as you can see, I can see the values starting from 2, it goes up. 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 3 is 11, 11 plus 3 is 14, 14 plus 3 is 17, which is greater than 16, so we just stop here. So very good way of doing different things. So let's do a little program in which we want to find the average of the numbers that the user is going to enter. Okay, so the user will enter, we will ask the user 10 numbers, and then we will run a program to find the average of those 10 numbers. Okay, so I'm going to erase this, and let's say first or just ask the user how many numbers they want to enter. So we will say num is what we want to ask the user, and then it would be an integer. Okay, very good. Where would that integer come from? It will come from input. Who will input it? We will say please enter the number of items or number of prices. Let's say they want to enter, and they enter the number of prices. Sorry, there should be one more to finish it. They enter the number of prices. Now what we will do is we will run our loop that many times to get the value of the item from the user. So let's say how would we do that? So we will say we will run a for loop, and we will say our number of item, our n, let's call this n in range. What do we want the range to be? We want the range to be in the num range. Now what does that mean? Now let's say the user enters 6, right? So when the user enters 6, num is equal to 6 then. So 6 will come in here. Now the job of this variable is to start from a start value, which when we give only one number is always 0. Then each iteration will assume one value from the starting value less than this value. So n in range, what we ask is, we ask the user to input the price that they want to enter. So we will say price. That could be a float, because price could be a float. And where it comes from? It comes from the input. And we ask the user, please enter the price of the item you bought. Let's say item. Now we want to do item number. Now here in this place we want to add, we want to have what is just we say the please enter the price of item. That's okay. We will go for later on that part. And that will go, it will enter as many number. If you enter 4, this loop will run 4 times. Each time n would be 0, 1, 2, 3. Now for accumulating the sum, what we do is initially we say that our sum was 0, because we have we have nothing in there in the beginning. Our value was 0. Since it comes out to be a different color, so it might be a keyword, so I just use the total is equal to 0. So when the user entered that, I will say total now will become whatever was the total plus sum now. Sorry, total plus the price. The loop will continue, and when we are done with the number of items that the user has entered in the total, we will have the total price that the user has entered. Now we can calculate the average. Average is equal to whatever is the total of the prices divided by the number of items that the user have entered, right? Some people divide it by n, but do understand n is just one value that's iterating. It's 0 for the first time, 1 for the second time, 2 for that. And I will show you an example of that as well. And then we will print average price is, and then you put out the average. Now let's be a little smart. What if the user have entered 0? Let's say if the number of item is equal to 0, because that we could have a very clever user, right? We will only do this. Sorry, if the number item is not equal to 0, then we will, we are very smart people, we will only calculate the average then, and so that would be a little modification on the program. Else what do we do? Else we will print no items entered. So a little bit of smartness in programming, so that we can see whether the user has entered. So we don't want to be calculating the average if they have entered 0 item, right? So let's run this and see how that works. So the program is running. It's asked me, please enter the number of prices you want to enter. Let's say I want to go through 4 prices. For first item is 89. The next item is 90. Then I have 89 and 90, so that should be 89.5, right? The average price is 89.5. Let's run this program again with 0 item, but before that I want to have a little bit of a space in here because that looks ugly. Okay, so let's go again and run it. And they're asking, please enter the number of items I want to enter. 0 item, and you enter 0 item. So in that case, we don't need to go through all of calculation, the average and all that, because that will look bad. So now take a look at the Python tutor and see how things come up in there, how the variables are changing. Okay. So I have pulled up the Python tutor website, and I am going to copy and paste my program in it, and I want to show you the variables. That's how they will come up. Okay. So let's start. Let me go to my program, and I will say click in there and Control A, Control C, minimize that, and come in here and Control V in here. So that is how my program look like in Python tutor. Now I want you to see the variables as they change. So we will press the visualize. So at the very bottom, you can see that it's asking me the number of prices you want to enter. I want to enter, let's say 4 prices, and submit. And here you can see that I can make it a little bigger. Here, so here we have a variable called num, which is assigned at number 4, the one just entered. Now you go further. Now total is assigned a value of 0. Keep an eye on that. And then we are going through our loop. You will see that we will get a variable n. We got our variable n. And at the bottom, you can see that we have been being asked for the price of the item. So let's say our first item was $12. Here I'm entering it. So what you see is when we go to the next, you see that item is equal to 12, because initially it was 0. 0 plus 12 is 12, and then n is equal to 0. But since we are back in for loop, and in the range it goes up by 1, because we haven't given it any step size, so it will go up by 1. So if I go back, n will become 1. You see that? And I'm ready for the next item here. So let's say this one was $10. Submit, and you can see that when we go to the next time, this has become 22. So each time we are going through the value of the variables. Now n will become 2, still in the range, because the range is 4. So we will go 0, 1, 0, range is num, which is 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. So next item is 11. You can see it in here. And when we press next, you can see the total has changed. Now when we press next, n will become 3. Now we have been through item number 0, 1, 2, and 3. That would be our 4th item. So let me enter, let's say it's also 11. Submit. Now our n is 3. We come up in here, total is updated, and our n, when we update the n, it is going up. So we are not going to go further. Now price is the price of the last item. We don't care. Now this condition is being checked. Is num 0? No. We move on, and then we calculate our average. You see the average comes up, and then we will print our result. So that is how the variables work in there. So n is a variable that counts from a beginning value, which by default in the range function, if you only give the ending value, is 0, and we go up by 1. So that is how we do the Python in there. That is how we do the counting loops. I will do more examples of later on, like a guessing game and other thing later on in there. So, but this is just an example of a simple Python loop and an example of finding an average of numbers. If you like this video, please subscribe to Professor A's CS Academy.